Let's bring in Congressman Kinzinger as well. So, Congressman Kinzinger, you've been outspoken about the president's conduct. You've said that the 25th Amendment should be invoked. You've encouraged the vice president to lead that effort. Will you vote for an impeachment resolution?
Look, I'll vote the right way when whatever's put in front of me. There's a lot of still negotiation going on. I honestly don't think impeachment's the smart move, because I think it victimizes Donald Trump again. And I think there's a moment that we're in right now where Donald Trump, he's looking really, bad. You just can't even put that into words, right? He stirred up a crowd. It was an executive branch attack on the legislative branch, one of the worst days in American history.
Hello, everyone. Adam here. Imagine this. You occupy the most powerful office on the planet, but the walls are not just closing in. They are actively crumbling around you. Your legacy is not being written in history books, but in sealed indictments and damning court transcripts. Your own government lawyers are abandoning their posts, fleeing a sinking ship they believe is headed straight for the rocks of criminal conviction.
A shakeup of former President Trump's legal team after he was indicted on federal charges. Sources tell ABC News 2 of Trump's attorneys have now resigned.
Your policies are being dismantled by the judiciary, one rebuke at a time. A recent government shutdown you engineered has backfired spectacularly, eroding your political capital. The Jeffrey Epstein scandal, a shadow you thought you could cast onto others, is now producing documents that inch closer to your own doorstep with every redacted release.
For all the things that aren't working, the DOJ has been forced to release far more Epstein files than they ever planned to. We got millions on Friday that shed light on Epstein's powerful circle, including individuals with close ties to both parties and the current president, Donald Trump.
And all the while, your approval rating ticks downward like a chilling countdown clock, synchronized perfectly with the approaching midterm elections. This is the reality for Donald J. Trump. So, what does a president do when besieged from every conceivable angle? When the usual tools of bluster, distraction, and base mobilization seem suddenly inert against the sheer weight of accumulating crises? He panics. And in a moment of breathtaking, unvarnished candor, he begged. He gathered the members of his own party, his last line of defense, and he pleaded with them not as a leader issuing a command, but as a desperate man issuing a final, urgent warning. The quote, laid bare, echoes with the sound of pure fear. If we fail, they will surely find a reason to impeach me. I'll be impeached.
You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached. We don't impeach them. You know why? Because they're meaner than we are. We should have impeached Joe Biden for 100 different things. They are mean and smart. But fortunately for you, they have horrible policy.
This is not the rhetoric of strength. It is the confession of a president who sees the gallows being built and knows the names of the carpenters. He is not projecting confidence in his innocence. He is admitting a profound, terrifying vulnerability. He is acknowledging that his political survival is no longer in his own hands, but in the hands of Republican candidates in swing districts he may have never visited. His presidency has been reduced to a single, stark equation: hold the House or face obliteration. But here is where the story accelerates from a political predicament to a constitutional cliffhanger. The Democrats are no longer merely discussing a distant, hypothetical impeachment. They have moved from theory to tangible procedural action. The resolutions are already drafted and filed. The demands for the resignations of his top officials are not whispers in hallways, but public ultimatums issued through megaphones and press conferences. The message to Trump's inner circle is brutal in its simplicity.
I want to be very clear. You have misused resources appropriated by Congress. You've engaged in unethical behavior. You have repeatedly made false and misleading statements to Congress and to the press, and you've undermined the separation of powers and disregarded the role of Congress and the courts. Bottom line, you lie with impunity. You reject checks and balances, and you ignore Congress and the courts. Your options are limited. Either you're going to resign, Trump's going to fire you, or you will be impeached.
Resign, or we will impeach you and drag you through a historic televised removal. And this ultimatum is not a final destination. It is a strategy, a creeping pressure campaign that starts with the cabinet and is designed to climb, step by inexorable step, right up to the resolute desk itself. Let's pull back the curtain on how we got here. On January 6, 2026, a date now forever stained in the American psyche, Trump stood before House Republicans at a private retreat. This was not a rally for the base, full of fiery ad-libs and crowd-pleasing grievance. This was a closed-door meeting with the very people whose loyalty he depends on for survival. And there, he discarded the armor of the invincible billionaire and revealed the raw nerve beneath.
So together we had 12 months of unprecedented success in 2025, and now we're going to make history and break records with the epic midterm victory that we're going to pull off. It just doesn't seem to happen for people that win the presidency. It's an amazing phenomenon. You know, you win the presidency, and we sure as hell are having a successful presidency, I will say that. But even if it's a successful presidency, there's been nothing like what we're doing. We had a very good day 2 days ago, too. But even if it's successful, they don't win. I don't know what it is. There's something psychological, like you vote against. You can win by a lot. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote by millions. We won everything. But they say that when you win the presidency, you lose the midterm. You got to win the midterms. Because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, I mean, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached.
His appeal was not a visionary roadmap for the next 2 years. It was a cry for personal salvation. You have to win the midterms, he implored, framing the coming election not as a choice of ideologies, but as a personal referendum on his own freedom from congressional accountability. He spelled it out in terms a child could understand. If Democrats seize the gavel, they will use it to gavel in articles of impeachment, a third impeachment. And with everything piling up, as he ominously put it, he might not survive the trial. Think about the profound significance of that admission. A president is telling his co-partisans that the opposition doesn't need to fabricate charges. They merely need the power to formalize the ones that already exist in the public record, in court filings, and in the wreckage of his second-term scandals. He is confirming that the evidence amassed by Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, evidence a federal prosecutor stated constituted proof of crimes beyond a reasonable doubt, is not a partisan fiction, but a loaded weapon waiting for a trigger finger. He is conceding that the Epstein file disclosures, the disastrous shutdown, the deadly operational failures within his agencies, and the mass exodus of his own Justice Department attorneys have collectively built a mountain of culpability so high that climbing out from under it is impossible without a Republican majority as a shield. This is the context that transforms political maneuvering into an existential threat. Democrats, sensing this profound weakness, are not waiting for the midterm results to act. They are building the impeachment machine now, so it is humming and ready to roar to life the moment the balance of power shifts. The blueprint is already in the congressional docket, House Resolution 353. This is not a press release or a fiery speech. It is a formal, filed impeachment resolution accusing President Trump of high crimes and misdemeanors committed during his second term. It sits in committee, a dormant legal beast, because Speaker Mike Johnson's gavel currently bars it from the floor. But its existence is a promise. It is a tangible, legalistic piece of paper that says, "We have done the homework, the charges are drafted, the constitutional rationale is set, we are only awaiting the votes." The moment the House flips, Resolution 353 is no longer a document. It becomes the agenda. Yet, the most telling part of the Democratic strategy is not their focus on Trump himself at this very second. It is the deliberate, systematic dismantling of the fortress walls around him. They are launching a pressure campaign against his cabinet, creating an atmosphere of such intense, personalized accountability that resignation begins to seem like the only sane option. The primary target is Homeland Security Secretary Christy Noem. The catalyst was a tragedy: deadly ICE shootings in Minneapolis during a high-profile deportation raid. The aftermath was not just grief, but furious, directed outrage. Democratic lawmakers, led by figures like Rapporteur Greg Casar, did not merely criticize the policy. They named the person they held responsible and issued a stark, binary choice.
Hey guys, it's Greg, and I'm standing outside of the ICE headquarters to demand the impeachment of Christy Noem, to demand an end to her reign of terror at ICE, to demand an end to Donald Trump's mass deportation machine. I was here with dozens of members of Congress, united to say we do not need an entire paramilitary force in ICE separating our families, attacking workers, attacking communities, and killing people in broad daylight. And
Secretary Noem, they declared, had fostered an atmosphere of purposeful chaos and violence. Therefore, she must resign immediately. The alternative? Impeachment proceedings. Democrats are marching to demand that we impeach Christy Noem, Casar stated, making the political theater feel like a somber, determined procession. This resign or be impeached ultimatum is a political weapon of immense power. It bypasses the lengthy, uncertain process of a full Senate trial for a cabinet official and replaces it with a brutal, immediate test of endurance. Can the official withstand the 24/7 media glare, the subpoenas for their internal communications, the parade of grieving families at hearings, and the certain defection of moderate members of their own party? For many, the answer is no. Resignation becomes the path of least resistance, a way to end the personal hell while letting the president fight on. But this is not just about Christy Noem. This is a field test of a broader strategy. By forcing a cabinet secretary out, either through a humiliating resignation or a grinding impeachment, Democrats achieve multiple objectives simultaneously. They demonstrate potency. They show their base and the nation that they can wield real consequence, that they can remove a powerful figure from the Trump ecosystem. They isolate the president. Each departed cabinet member is another severed artery of administrative competence and political support. It leaves Trump standing alone on an increasingly barren landscape. They establish a narrative template. The language used against Noem, purposeful chaos, violence, abuse of power, is purposefully broad and transferable. It is a label that can be and will be seamlessly applied to the president himself. Once the public accepts that a cabinet secretary can be removed for creating chaos, it is a much shorter logical leap to apply the same standard to the architect of that chaos. They create a precedent of capitulation. Every resignation under this pressure makes the next one more likely. It creates a domino effect of surrenders, normalizing the idea that the correct response to democratic oversight is not to fight, but to flee. This is how you lay the groundwork for a presidential resignation. You do not start by demanding the president resign on day one. You start by making the cost of loyalty for his top aides unbearably high. You force them to choose between their own reputations and their fealty to a president who may soon be unable to protect them. One by one, you pick off the knights and the bishops until the king is exposed on the board with nowhere left to run. Historically, this is the precise playbook that led to the only presidential resignation in American history. As the Watergate scandal deepened, the pressure did not initially focus solely on Richard Nixon. It targeted his inner circle, the Haldemans, the Ehrlichmans, the Deans. They were indicted, they resigned in disgrace, they turned state's evidence. The castle walls were dismantled brick by brick, until Nixon stood alone in the Oval Office, isolated and defenseless, facing an impeachment vote he knew he would lose. The resignation was not the first move, it was the last. Trump, a student of Nixon's fall, undoubtedly sees the parallels. His panic is not just about a vote count, it is about recognizing a familiar, chilling pattern. The everything piling up he referenced is this multi-vector assault: the legal, Smith's evidence; the scandalous, Epstein; the operational, shutdowns, ICE shootings; the institutional, courts, resigning DOJ lawyers; and now the political, the cabinet pressure campaign. It is a perfect storm of vulnerability, and the midterms are the hurricane's eye. This is why the 2026 midterms have been transformed from a typical battle for congressional control into a singular, national referendum on one question. Should Congress be given the tools to remove Donald Trump from office? Trump himself has framed it this way. The Democrats are certainly framing it this way. Their pitch to voters is no longer a generic promise of checks and balances. It is a direct offer. Give us the majority, and we will end the chaos. We will impeach him. We will hold his administration accountable. We will use the evidence Jack Smith has provided. We will subpoena the unredacted Epstein files. We will bring order. This is a powerful, mobilizing message for a weary electorate. And so Trump's begging takes on a tragic, historic dimension. He is not campaigning for a party platform. He is conducting a nationwide hostage rescue operation where the hostage is his own presidency. Every Republican candidate he stumps for, every dollar he raises, every attack he launches against a Democratic opponent is fundamentally about one goal: preserving the Republican House majority as his final crumbling line of defense. He knows that if that line breaks, the sequence of events is virtually preordained. January 2027, Democrats take control of the House. Resolution 353 is moved from committee to the floor. Winter-Spring 2027, a series of spectacular televised impeachment hearings commence. Jack Smith testifies. Whistleblowers from DHS and the DOJ are subpoenaed. The families from Minneapolis testify. Experts dissect the Epstein flight logs and communication logs. It becomes a nightly, panoramic, televised narrative of scandal and alleged criminality. The cabinet collapse. Simultaneously, the resign or be impeached pressure intensifies tenfold on the remaining cabinet. More resignations follow, creating a daily drumbeat of administrative collapse. The ultimatum. The language once used on Christy Noem is formally applied to Trump. Influential senators, perhaps even some Republicans, begin to publicly muse that for the good of the country, the president should consider resigning to spare the nation a traumatic trial. The choice. Trump is left with the Nixon choice. Fight a doomed, disgraceful battle that ends with an impeachment conviction and permanent, explicit repudiation, or negotiate a resignation. Resignation could offer certain shields, perhaps preemptive pardons for himself and his family, agreements on the disposition of his assets, a narrative of putting the country first. Impeachment offers only humiliation and a permanent legal brand. Trump's panic, therefore, is the logical, rational response of a man who can see this tunnel and can see there is no light at the end of it unless his party can win an election they are currently on track to lose. His begging is the sound of a president who has run out of other options. The walls are not just closing in, they have him cornered. The Democrats are not just issuing threats, they are methodically assembling the apparatus that will make good on them. All that remains is the vote, the final judgment of the American people. And Trump, for perhaps the first time, is utterly powerless, left to plead with his allies and hope it is enough to stave off the inevitable. The clock is ticking, the pressure is mounting, and the nation watches, holding its breath, to see if a president will be forced to utter the two words he has spent a lifetime avoiding: I resign.